with the particular scenes here. Now, as far as, within talking those moments, you kind of mentioned those scenes. Were there certain things, maybe earlier on in your writing that have helped you out as far as keeping in mind how to, portray tastes or portraying smells, or because I think there's something where a lot of times less is more is the approach, and there's something with your writing that I have felt even beyond a lot of other people's that I have read, where it puts me like, whether or not I literally want to be in that position right there and then, I don't have the imagination to sit here and play with, oh, maybe it kind of looks like I'm fucking there.
Yeah, I feel that stylistically, aesthetically, that's just how I've settled. It's almost like even if I didn't want to, I really admire competition. That's not me really. I'm sort of more like detail oriented, scene building, and so sometimes the edits actually are scaling back, and sometimes it's like it's really where to put the emphasis. Like, okay, if you're doing a scene like the one we spoke about or some of the other ones I've written, it's like that one, those feel like, okay, those are moments to kind of like do your best to envelop the reader and get them as involved, as pulled into the narrative and into the scene itself as possible. Um, and to hopefully lock them there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But then there are other points where, especially in horror, it really is, as you know, you're clearly a student of this. It's a matter of taste and it's a matter of aesthetics, and some people really like, um, sort of the shadow of the thing, but not the thing itself.
Sure.
As do I. You know what I mean? They're the idea that your mind can create something far more terrifying, than someone could necessarily give to you. And there's even a writer like King, who is awesome, gets nailed sometimes for his endings because eventually, if there's a monster in the closet, you may, the expectation is you've got to show that monster, and when it pops out and you can see it's got a tin can head and it's oh no, no, no. But so in some ways, believe it or not, you kind of get railroaded into it at some level. You think, anyways, that you've got to reveal this thing, and some really great writers would show you stylistically, or the way that they've developed their aesthetic is like, no, 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 we can sort of keep these things obscured. And but then again, that again, it just doesn't work for some people, right? So I've recognized over time a couple things, is that my aesthetic is my own thing. The things that scare me, the way I like to, even if it doesn't scare me, the way I like to be led towards that
Sure.
revelation or scare is, I like that. And I think another thing you realize is again, writing is not, by far, is not the hardest thing on earth by any stretch, but it's hard enough, and it can be as emotionally draining sometimes. But the emotional drain can come from feeling that you're not measuring up to somebody's expectations of what they're looking for. But then you're sort of like, that's not a reasonable expectation that you could feel that you should have to uphold, because everyone's going to
Sure.
come from different places. Everyone's going to have their own. So, if someone does like a gothic sort of ghost story, well, no matter what I do, I'm not, my work aesthetically is not going to necessarily please that reader, most likely, unless they have a sort of a broad palette for what they like in horror. So trying to please all tastes, or find everybody's threshold and hit it right within their sort of sweet spot,
Mhm.
it's, you know what I mean? It's almost impossible. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
there are a few writers who come close, like King seems to be just universal. Even someone like Kuntz, you know what I mean, seems to
Yeah.
like doing what he does, seems to have a certain broad appeal, and that's great. Whether I wished for that or not, it's not a wish that will ever be fulfilled. You know what I mean? And my style, just like any writer's style, it goes way back to a place that I can't even remember, let alone see all the different sort of points of reference that built the style towards what it is, whether they were conscious choices, whether they're kind of unconscious kind of obsessions and motivations pushing me towards some sort of endpoint. So, like, the, the the problem is that so many writers and creative people, I think, are ultimately people pleasers sometimes, and so you don't want anyone to like feel like they've wasted their time reading your book or watching your movie, or but at the same point, like, it's impossible to make everybody happy because people
Mm.
just simply have their own tastes, and so I've had to, just as a writer in general, I've had to recognize that, like, you got to ride the horse that got you there.
Yeah.
That, that horse might be absolutely hideous to some people who see it passing by. It's like, what's that filthy thing doing, and who's that weirdo on top of it? Me. So, you know what I mean? And you just gotta, because other people will find it lovely. It's exactly the thing that they want to see striding by, right? So you just have to hope that you get enough of those, and that the people who find it filthy and hideous just sort of forget about it.
Yeah. I respect, I mean, I guess within kind of your breakdown and mentioning the integrity behind, like, there's just times where sometimes you have something where you're trying to, maybe kind of like jump a little bit, farther into what you were initially looking at, but then other times, you're like, this is my horror story. I have been obsessed with this stuff since I've been a kid, and I am going to dive in and cackle while I'm doing it. And I love that. And I think it truly showed with this too. And moving on, within Cascade and touching
Mm,
on this, um, I will be sensitive with time and all that. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of the shorts that
yeah,
were in
yeah, of
this.
course.
Initially, within the Vanishing Twin, you have a story takes place in a detention center, a jail, a prison, something very different from anything that you're normally seeing in a setting. What can you tell us as far as just the prep that went into writing something like this, and kind of the familiarity of the setting in general within?
Well, that's a great question. And it comes down to, again, sort of prior things that I've loved, and I mean, actually, like, I guess, I have a novel. There's Cutter universe. I've got a novel coming out shortly, and then I've got another one that it is written, and then the next one is
Oh,
actually a bit. It's like a, well, it's like takes place in, like, I mean, I love prison novels. You know what I mean? The Shawshank Redemption.
uh-huh.
Um, Papillon. Trying to think, King Rat. Cool Hand Luke. You know what I mean? There's a great tradition of, like, awesome prison novels, like adult prison novels,
Sure.
um, which I love. But I was fascinated, and this novel and The Vanishing Twin, the story, which sort of is an offshoot of it, in children. Not children, but preteens, what would once have been called juvenile detention centers.
Hmm.
And, like, I mean, it is essentially, a prison, obviously, and the kids who get sent there have most likely, not been railroaded. They've done it because there's something that they have done that has been
Put
frictive
them
with
there.
society, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let's put them there, as you said. So, and so you're working with anti-heroes, first of all, generally, which I like, you know what I mean? But also, at most every prison novel you're going to read, you know, the second side of that is the guards, the trustees, as they're often called in juvenile detention centers. Um, and they have their own ways of handling things, and some of them I'm sure can be very good, and some of them can be very awful, right? So you have already, I mean, what I'm always interested in a lot of writers is like a petri dish, and you put in and you just see what sort of weird skeins they grow in, and to me, like, a prison or a juvenile detention facility always seemed to me like an absolutely fascinating petri dish. And then, of course, in a horror novel, you add an external, often supernatural threat that predates upon the entire system that is already set up there, and functioning in whatever bastardized way it does. So that, destabilizes things even further, right? And destabilizes the who's in charge of everything. So that's kind of the notion that the Vanishing Twin kind of comes from. That's a more standard, just in some ways straight ahead story of brotherly affection gone bad.
Sure.
An obsessional tale, but they both spring, Eric, from the same soil, and I haven't got down to editing that one yet, but I'm really excited about that. That's probably, of all the Cutter books, the one that I'm uh, most hopeful and excited for, because obviously I've written about kids before, as you've said, the troop.
Uh,
But there's just some affinity for me. I've always loved that type of narrative. in an imprisonment narrative, and then and working within that in a horror way. Which, yeah, I don't. There was a couple chapters in the Talisman where there was a prison,
Hmm.
like juvenile detention. Some of the characters get caught there, but I haven't read too many, at least that I know, where like horror in a prison. So I'm looking forward to sort of
Right.
digging in and trying to say something potentially a little different. We'll see.
Whoa, that's awesome. I didn't even realize that that was the thing that you were going to, because I mentioned in this interview as far as any of these that you know possibly would be developing into a full story, but that's going to be a thing apparently.
That is, yeah, and
Oh,
I honestly
dang.
don't remember which was the chicken, which is the egg. Whether I wrote the prison novel first and then the Vanishing Twin as an offshoot of that. But I'm guessing no, I probably the Vanishing Twin, and then I'm like, oh, I like this milieu. So I'll try and do it in a larger scale as a Cutter book.
Oh man, that is absolutely awesome. Look, I had a couple other things here. I'm going to end it off on a fun little shoot here. Something I've been doing with different directors and writers and things, people that are fans of, and in a little bit called Saturday Night at the Davidson. So
Nice.
we've spent a couple of hours here at our local video store, and we've now grabbed a couple of titles, and we've whittled it down to two. And just based off the cover art, I was going to ask you which of these you would choose for our Saturday Night at the Davidsons
Awesome.
here.
All
So,
right, I love it.
first of all, we have V. Now, you mentioned Japanese horror. Now
Oh,
this movie is actually, I want to say Russian, and I hope I don't get absolutely killed for saying that. I'm trying to think of Soviet Union. Oh my heavenly.
okay.
So V, we have this absolutely wild, very crazy artwork,
Oh, I love it.
almost early feeling of the Wizard of Oz stop animation, different things, very
Yeah,
silly, but there's some very crazy things going on in this. And then we have the Indonesian Satan Slave. I don't know if you've ever heard of this bad boy here, but
I feel
just
like
off the cover
that's
art,
yeah, I love that. Which am I going on?
which were we bringing
Oh,
home here?
Satan Slave. Gotta go
Satan
with
Slave.
Satan Slave, I'd say. Yep.
Very awesome, very awesome. Yeah, if at any point if you have Shutter, I know that that is in
We
Canada,
do.
correct?
We have it up here. Yep, we
Yeah.
do.
Okay. Okay. I know that Satan Slave is on there. So if at some point you're just shooting on through some titles, maybe check it out.
Satan Slave. I'll see if my wife wants to watch it with me. We'll
It's
make it a
awesome.
date
It
night.
is. Yeah, it's great. Craig, thank you so much, man. This has been absolutely so awesome. I really appreciate the time, man. Thank you tons.
Well, Eric, really, my appreciation's right back at you. And those really some great questions I had not been asked before. So it was my
Fun.
pleasure. To do this.
Awesome. All right, man. You take care and stay healthy and enjoy your day.
All right, you too. Take care.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye.